YouTube, how's it going? The Godows is back, counting down my top 10 takeaways from week 2 of the NFL. Recap video was our most recent. That is going over the biggest winners and losers from week 2. Now we have this new video, so we kind of made these into two, my top 10 takeaways. So excited to break this down here. And then we'll be on to our week 3 content with picks, power rankings, score predictions, picks against the spread, bets, and more every single week. Hopefully you join us, like, subscribe to notifications on. Follow us on Twitter. Live analysis during live NFL games. Twitter subs get even more content, and you see listed below me. And then check out our sponsors: GLD Shop, Liquid IV, code GOAT. Rocking the Micah Parsons chain from the GLD Shop. He has the same exact one. He is also sponsored by them. We have a giveaway going on. You get a pendant and a chain. Links pinned in the comments for that. Our Twitter, anything else you're looking for, check it out. On to my top 10 takeaways from week 2. Starting with number 1, the Atlanta Falcons feel like a team that is a QB away from not only being a legit threat, but maybe a serious contender as well, which might seem a little bold because we're used to the Falcons being a struggling team, but they're talented on paper. We saw that what they've been adding over the last few off seasons, this off season, and that was on display. It's been on display the first 2 weeks, but here in week 2 mainly in a good comeback win against the Green Bay Packers. But yeah, saying they're a QB away, it's not saying Ritter 100% is not the answer. I'm not saying that. Ritter could be that QB away. He could be that guy. He has some work to do still. I thought in the first, and this is overall a win of a week for the Falcons because they come back and win, and they're 2-0, and they looked really good across the board. I think really well coached as well, and we see them taking strides. The defense is much better than last year. The play calling is much better than last year. So, but I do think they got down in this game because Ritter was struggling a little bit. He struggles to get a whole lot going production-wise through the air, specifically downfield. So he does have to be better to win those bigger games because they played the Panthers and the Packers. When they play the better teams, they don't want to have to come back from being down. So I do think Ritter's struggles played a big part in them kind of getting down, but I did think he bounced back in the second half. Remember, he's kind of just getting going. He doesn't have too many starts under his belt, so he could be that QB, that they need. He could still be that. So with this statement, I'm saying, I'm not saying he's not, but again, if they go out and get that sure thing quarterback, doesn't need to be a great quarterback. I mean, that would be something, but just get a sure thing, good quarterback, with some upside. The Atlanta Falcons would be damn scary because they have potential. They're heading in the right direction, and the roster is extremely talented. Just another big-time win from the Falcons. So, they're that close. I mean, it's hard to say close because finding a quarterback isn't the easiest thing, but they don't need much because how good that roster is. But a good week, another good week for the Atlanta Falcons. My number 2 takeaway is going to come with the Chargers. They're 0-2 right now, so people are panicking a little bit because they're 0-2, and then the panic comes from what people are saying. Are they with the stacked AFC? Are they going to make the playoffs when you start 0-2? This is bad. Are they going to be Are they going to keep losing? Are they going to lose to the Vikings this week? Are they going to keep losing? And they're going to play the Chiefs twice still. The AFC's tough, like I said. I'm not really panicking in that regard. I mean, obviously it's not good to start 0-2. Obviously they need to be a better team. Obviously they got to be able to beat a Titans team that's missing some players to be a better team, to be a good team. But I think they should still end up being a pretty good team, like fighting for the playoffs, in the playoffs. Are they going to be much more than that? Probably not. But so I'll actually say let's not panic about this year because they're 0. You can panic a little bit. You can worry a little bit. Let's not panic, I guess is the best way to say it. But these games and a game like that is making me realize something else, that they are in a rough situation. Number 1, there's actually multiple things here. They're in a rough situation because, again, I'm not going to panic about the rest of this year. I think they'll be a pretty good team, but how good of a team? When you have that good of a quarterback, Justin Herbert, they're just not going to be good enough. They don't have the right talent. They don't have the right coaching staff. They don't have the right team right now to be where they need to be while having Justin Herbert. But I'm also looking at the future. A game like this against the Titans kind of made me think of the future as well because they just obviously before the season locked up Justin Herbert, so he is no longer on his rookie contract going forward. He has a massive contract with massive cap hits, and he's worth it, of course. I'm not going to say otherwise. But that kind of, kind of says that maybe we're outside of the window of having the most talented roster, because your best bet at having the most talented roster you can have is when you have that really good quarterback and he's on that rookie contract, or if you're lucky and he's on a cheap contract, whether it's a rookie or not, but most on the rookie contract. So they're kind of passing that window. So that means they should be the best they can be right now. And of course they can get better, and I would hope they would be better in the future, but that means this is kind of their window. It is almost, in a way, nobody says the Chargers are Super Bowl or bust, because people think they're a really good team and not really a Super Bowl or bust team, but they should be a Super Bowl or bust team this year. So the fact that they aren't there is a little concerning, and everyone wants to blame Brandon Staley and Kellen Moore getting some blame now, some question, like, is he the guy of the future? That's still to be determined, but everyone wants to blame Staley and said he should have been fired and he should be gone. And I'm going to say, you're absolutely right. Yeah, he sucks. He's a defensive guy. The defense sucks. He should have been gone. They should have fired him at the end of last year. But my point is, what people aren't talking about, where people aren't pointing, fingers at, talking about blame, is Telesco, the GM, the front office. I think that's actually more of a problem, and that's something I'm realizing now, and that's why it's a big takeaway here. It's been a problem. I mean, they're in charge of keeping ownership as well, but keeping Brandon Staley but kind of going back where you had Justin Herbert on that rookie contract through this year, and you were unable to build a good team, and the defense looks like crap right now. The offense, it relies on, it relies on Herbert too much. It relies on him making clutch play after clutch play and having to do it at the end of the game every single week, and it's tough for him to do that with the coaching, with the team, and in the defense, we talk about the defense does not look at it all. They haven't really fixed problems, stopping the run, big plays through the air, so there's more blame than just Staley to go around here, and it's tough because you do have some star players outside of Herbert as well, but for you not to be good enough, it's extremely, extremely tough. And Austin Eckler is a big time player, and you needed him apparently. Even though were you going to be able to run all over the Titans' run defense? Probably not, anyways. But besides the point, he's kind of a big piece of this offense, and they didn't want to pay him the money he was looking for. I know they resolved something, but he's still a free agent after this year. Keenan Allen will probably be gone. Relying on development of Quentin Johnston and Mike Williams staying healthy and things like that. And maybe they still have a question at right tackle. They've kind of relied on Pipkins there. And the defense, you're going to have to almost tear down the defense, not completely, but close, tear down, because Joey Bosa, okay, let's forget Bosa. He does have to stay healthy, but Khalil Mack's going to be on his way out, and they got to get the run defense better, and they thought they can, and we'll still see this year, but they thought they can fix the linebacker unit with Eric Kendricks, but that would be just for now. So are they going to have to be a team that almost goes in a rebuild, or I don't want to say that, retool mode, while they have Justin Herbert on a massive contract? So I am starting to realize the bigger picture here down the road, and even though all the blame has gone on Staley, which rightfully so, the front office deserves a lot of shit here, because it's looking like a messy situation, and we're really not talking about the 0-2 situation, partly because if they were 2-0 right now, we wouldn't be talking about this. But so it's something that I'm starting to realize, a little bit of an ugly situation. It can't be that ugly though, because when you have a star quarterback, it could be a lot worse, but you got to be winning some football games here. So tough situation for the Chargers. Number 3, the Bears. They're still in early rebuild, which I still wondered that this offseason. It really isn't gigantic, surprising news or anything. It might be news to some people, but I don't think they're in stage 1. I think they are in. That's the thing, though. What I'm trying to think, because I always kind of split rebuild mode into stages. It's not, you don't go from 1 to 10 just like that. And the Bears were in stage 1 during the year last year. People want to say, but they were still in stage 1 while gathering pieces of the rebuild, which was just this draft and offseason, but they did add draft picks for next year's draft. That was kind of the main focus there. So I think they kind of started on that rebuild, but it should have been a little more obvious to people. It's kind of what I'm getting to, that they are still early in the rebuild, and they're playing like it as well. They're playing actually almost worse than expected, because home against the Packers week 1 and then playing the Buccaneers week 2. This was supposed to be the start of the schedule, like the schedule where you might be able to sneak some games off and get some momentum, and they're not doing that. So that's a tough part. And QB is looking like a need, and I'm thinking the front office made sure to get 2 first-round draft picks. That was a point of emphasis in what we knew was going to be and sure looks like a heavy quarterback class, a very good quarterback class. I'm thinking the front office deep down kind of had an idea that they may need a quarterback. And Justin Fields, again, still has upside. It's only been 2 games. He can play better. But a lot of these issues are issues that, we're in year 3. He's got more starts under his belt. He's got better weapons. The offensive line actually played okay in the Bucs game. So it's really running out of excuses here, and he just needs to play better. And he also has some issues what are the issues? The processing speed and the vision mainly. If you want to nitpick, I think it's not really nitpicking, but I also think he panics a little bit, takes off a little too early. He's thinking too much. But all those things, but mainly the processing speed and the vision, are those things things you can coach out of a quarterback or change from a quarterback, especially when he's already been playing in the NFL? I can't recall that very often or at all in the NFL. So you're starting to, the chances of him panning out are starting to decrease. We don't want to say 0%, but they're starting to decrease a little bit. But so you say quarterback is probably a need. And the coaching staff may be one as well, because Eberflus, I always say it, with the Colts, on paper, that Colts defense, that didn't, it always played much better than it did than it looked on paper. I always thought he had them balling, team defense, so that was good. But is he playing his part in Chicago? Maybe he doesn't have the right roster, especially for the defense, to be doing that. But it doesn't really feel like the same Eberflus, and then the play calling on offense hasn't really been ideal. I think it's more of the lack of having the players prepared. Week 1, that was. I think week 1, the issue was quarterback play, offensive line play, players just not knowing the play. But a lot of that goes on to the coaching, having them prepared. So I think number 1 in week 1 was coaching. I think number 1 in week 2 was the quarterback play was the worst. I think pretty clearly. But so it being a little bit of a mess, I think that's kind of the main thing. The play calling could be better. But I do think they know that they're limited with their play calling, their play styles, because of the quarterback struggles. So the quarterback's in a tough spot, coaching staff's and the play calling's in a tough spot. It's kind of a big circle, but that's kind of my takeaway. QB is a need, which isn't that shocking? Probably not, but it was kind of the big question we need an answer this year, and there's still time, but QB's probably a need. The coaching staff might be one as well. So we'll see what they decide to do. But I keep saying now, it's something that we're realizing. The front office gathered 2 first-round picks for this upcoming draft, maybe for a reason. Maybe deep down they knew something. So it's been a tough go for the Bears so far. Number 4, the Giants. Very nice comeback win. When you come back like that, pretty damn impressive, fun, gain some momentum. You got to win, so that's good. But still several concerns. The Giants do not look like, in the second half, they look like a pretty good football team. Again, they played the Arizona Cardinals, who I think every single person on the planet projected them to be the worst football team in the NFL this year. But still, it's impressive to do against anybody, no matter who it is. But there's still several concerns. Through 6 quarters, they look like easily the worst team in football. The quarterback play hasn't been there. The second half, it got better. But how's it going to be, when you're playing better teams, like the Cowboys, teams like that. The offensive line play hasn't been there. Of course, Andrew Thomas was out, but that's not there. I still think Brian Daboll is a solid coach. He had good adjustments the second half. Obviously, he's a good coach still, but it gets a little tougher. Teams start to more of tapes out after 1 year. Teams start to game plan for them a little better. I talked about that in the offseason. So Daniel Jones has to take, actually, he can't be the same. He has to take the step up to overcome that, and that hasn't really been shown yet. I like that they're getting Jalen Hyatt going a little bit, but the receivers with drops, and the receivers are not good enough right now. And then defensively, you got guys like Dexter Lawrence, and there's other guys that can play. Adoree Jackson, McKinney can play. But besides Dexter Lawrence, is there a guy that is like, a sure thing, like top player or close to a top player? Not really. Again, Thibodeau, guys like that could become those players, but I want to see more out of those guys, those good young players. So I still think there is actually, we're realizing a little bit more, despite coming off the win, that there's more needs, more holes on this roster, and maybe that's why they're struggling, as they are starting to get a little more predictable and more in game plan for more properly on both sides of the ball, really, because Don Martindale is known as a good defensive coordinator, but he's going to run man coverage. He's going to blitz. It's, year two, it's starting to get a little more predictable, and maybe teams are kind of figuring out Daboll's offense, but he did figure something out in the second half. And the front office, I think, is already in question. Some people are starting to bring it up a little bit, and you still need more of a sample size going forward. But with the Daniel Jones contract, and again, maybe he can continue to play like he did in the second half of this game, but for the contract they gave him, it needs to be a sure thing. He needs to be better. Given that contract out, how they handled the Barkley situation, and then some of the draft picks that we thought were really good are, some don't look good. Some are still a question, and there's some that will be good in the contracts they've given out. So there's still some questions there, and it doesn't say, yes, it's a bad front office. No, we're not saying that yet. It's pretty early for Joe Schoen, obviously, to say that, but it's coming up a little bit. You question it, you wonder in the back of your mind a little bit. So in a tough schedule coming up, there are still some concerns with the Giants, despite having a good momentum win there. So that's going to have a takeaway from that one. If they lost that game, we'd be looking at them as the 32nd team in the power rankings, 32nd team in football, maybe right next to the team we just talked about in the Bears, so 31 or 32. But they pulled it off. Number 5, the Bills. The Bills, when I see, and it's something I talked about during the offseason that was a possibility for the Bills. Then we get to week 1. They're very disappointing on offense, mainly Josh Allen with the turnovers, and they lose to the Jets when they have Zach Wilson, and it's more panic than anything. But if you combine the first 2 weeks, I'm actually thinking, combine them evenly. Think about the Jets game, think about the Raiders game, and the Raiders aren't the best team in the world. They have a pretty bad defense, so we'll slow up a little bit. The Bills should be able to score on offense. So we're going to start, disclaimer, we're going to start with that. But if you combine the 2 weeks, I'm actually thinking positively about the Bills. I'm thinking positive about the Bills moving forward. And, I see some good things. But kind of what I have listed here is kind of things I hinted at in the offseason. I think the offensive playbook is kind of a danger to opponents. It's very dangerous. I think it's a big playbook. You look at the Bills in the past, explosive offense, and it was kind of a pretty big playbook, a variety of plays as it was because Josh Allen, his arm strength and his running / athletic ability, what they're able to do. But I think time went on and teams starting to figure it out a little bit, but they had the talent to overcome that for the most part because they're just that good. But they didn't have much of a run game sometimes, but now they add 12 personnel. We've talked about it all offseason. We talked about it in the most recent video, which features 2 tight ends, 2 tight end sets, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, and I think that adds more. And they ran that at the least amount last year, and now they have quite a bit of it. Looking at the first 2 weeks, I think a little bit more in week 1. That's kind of the good thing though, because they're just learning it. And you can bounce back and forth. 1 week you don't have to really have any of it or some of it, and 1 week you have a lot of it, and 1 week you mix it in half and half, and that's kind of the positive here there. For the Buffalo Bills, I think it adds to the playbook, stretches it out. You stretch that playbook because they already stretched the field out with their talent they have, and that makes the opponent's defenses think and makes the game plan tougher. So I think that's fantastic. And believe it or not, I think the offense actually has a ceiling. And people may not agree with that because the Bills, this is the kind of the same team, the Josh Allen team that's been around for a little bit now. Are they getting any better? People kind of, again, figure them out. Not that it means they're stopping them, but can they get over the hump because, teams kind of got them figured out. Maybe there's just better teams or I don't know, whatever it may be. But again, kind of going back to the first part where they've added to their playbook, they have more tricks up their sleeve and they're able to spread the ball out more. They have more weapons, which makes defenses think, and it's going to open things up for this guy, open up things for that guy. I think they have upside because of all of that, because they're just getting going, kind of learning these new play styles in their offense. So, and young players like Dalton Kincaid and you could throw a guy like Khalil Shakir in there, but James Cook, and then factor in the running game. The running game looks better so far. I know Raiders defense, one of the weaker ones in football. I know it's only been 2 weeks, but kind of what I was projecting going into the year. But being able to run the ball a little bit more, and I think 12 personnel opens that up too. So it kind of gives them a variety of things to go at defenses with, and that kind of keeps them on the toes and makes them think. So I think the Bills are actually an upside team. I actually feel, seeing all this, I feel a little bit more better about their chances, late into the season, meaning playoffs and things. So, Some exciting stuff for the Buffalo Bills there. Number 6, the Eagles. They're 2-0. They get another win. This was on Thursday night, but they just don't feel nearly as explosive as 2022 as last year. And a lot of people saying this. And again, they're 2-0, and that's kind of the positive here. There is a positive. They are 2-0. There's another positive. They're 2-0, and they haven't really figured it out yet this year. So that, if they figure it out, what are they going to be, right? So they're going to continue to win. They can continue to win as it is. So that's kind of the positive, but I guess the negative is why do they have to figure something out? Why aren't they nearly as explosive? Just don't feel right. Jalen Hurts maybe doesn't really feel the same. I think the different play choices, him not being comfortable with no Steichen there could be the case. Does that fix? Are they saving stuff? Do they get better? It's kind of a to be determined type situation. But I do think which isn't really a surprise, but I do think they're missing, and it's kind of showing they're missing both coordinators on both sides. People talk about Steichen. That's an obvious one. A very good play caller, very good system. But defensively, too, Gannon mixed it up so much with the coverages. He had the secondary balling no matter who was out there, but mixing with different type of zone coverages. I thought he ran cover 6 is as good as anybody, because you don't see that too often. And it just kind of seemed predictable, in their man coverage back-to-back plays. Don't love seeing that at times right now. So, and they are missing some guys in the secondary, but it's so talented across the board on defense that, they're relying on turnovers a little bit. So you can kind of right away in that Vikings team, even though they pulled it off, they did have some luck there, but even though they pulled it off pretty early in that game, you kind of can just feel it. I don't know, that was me. I kind of can, more than just see it. You kind of can just feel it that this is not the same dominant team, but it can be as the year goes on. Because actually week 2 at home, prime time against the same exact team last year is where we kind of learned, like, okay, this team is serious. It is for real. And even though they won in this game, it's like, they better figure something out, and they could. Again, can't stress that enough. But step up and figure something out, because it doesn't really feel like the Super Bowl teams last year. But again, it's only week 2, so again, I can't stress that enough. But it'll be interesting to see as time goes on here this year. That's kind of my takeaway with them, despite being 2-0. Number 7, the Commanders touched on this yesterday or last night, the most recent video as the biggest winners and losers of week, and obviously the Commanders were on the winning column of week 2. But I feel like they have crazy upside throughout their roster, and we kind of knew that because they have a first-year starting, well, he started before, but first-year starting quarterback in Sam Howell. We have in the second year, we should say, second-year running back Brian Robinson. We have first-year coordinator, young receivers, Jahan Dotson, one of them, but really everywhere. And then defensively, they got Chase Young back. Yeah, a lot of upside guys across the defensive line, but then looking at the young players in the secondary, the safety duo is already solid, and it's young. Rookie and Emmanuel Forbes is a solid corner. I mean, so you can see it. It doesn't take an expert to see that they have young players with upside on their roster. But I think they're showing it a ton, like more than expected. And it's not really the players. It's not, and each player kind of shows it, but it's not really just the players. Like this player showing some upside. This player, and of course they do. It's more of like as a team, as a unit, and you factor in the first-year coordinator Eric Bieniemy and putting his system into play. So looking at that, not only throughout the whole roster, but the offense just looks like it has crazy potential. Like if you're looking at the teams in the NFL, like who has the most upside, and some people may say teams that have a lot of draft picks or good draft picks in the future. I understand that, but understand that point. But when talking about who's kind of already has those players, factoring in that, I think the Commanders are up there at the top of the league. Does that mean they are the top team, and a Super Bowl contender for the next years to come? Not necessarily. They could be, though. That's kind of the idea. That maybe they could become that, I guess, depending on how rapidly these players take off, how good Howell is. But you're noticing the upside a little bit more in the offense, and we're noticing this a little bit more. The offense can really stretch defenses because Sam Howell can air the ball deep. The receivers can go deep. They can go get the ball and run routes anywhere on the field. Howell could buy time in the pocket as well. But I talked about a lot last night. The most recent video, I keep saying the most recent video. My favorite thing is how they're using these running backs. And you may say, well, Gibson got a couple carries. Did he get one carry, couple carries, whatever it may have been. But you see him in the pass catching game as a pass catcher in the passing game. But you factor in Brian Robinson on the ground and through the air. It looks pretty damn good. It looks pretty damn scary. It's physical. It's fast. It's tough to deal with for opposing defenses, and you factor in how they stretch the field vertically, stretch defenses vertically. It kind of all comes together. You got to worry about so many things, and it's just so tough for defenses to deal with. So I love that. Two things. I kind of a disclaimer. I will point out. They played the Cardinals and they played the Broncos. So I would love to see them play tougher teams, and that'll happen. It's not their fault that they haven't yet. And there will be growing pains still. It comes with kind of being an upside roster, an upside team, a young quarterback. They'll have weeks where it kind of looks like shit. They will. And it kind of looked like shit a little bit for that Cardinals game. And that's okay to me. I think a little more highly of the Commanders for this year, maybe a little bit, but more so for the future there. Again, upside potential. So that's and it was fun. Seeing them score 35 points, being that explosive, figuring something out, kind of clicking. And again, the defense will click more and more. That's kind of Ron Rivera, Jack Del Rio defense. They'll kind of click more and more as the year goes on. So some good looks there for the Washington Commanders. Number 8, going to go with the Jacksonville Jaguars. A pretty straightforward here, short one. I think they're wildly, and it's only been 2 weeks. That's something you got to keep in mind. I'm not making this clear-cut, guaranteed statement with any of these for the rest of the year, but wildly inconsistent for a contender. Because this is a really good team, and whether you consider them a contender or not, everyone thinks they're a pretty damn good team. I don't know, they just lost to the Chiefs. It's not the end of the world. Chiefs just got Kelsey and Chris Jones back. They were due for a win because they lost their first one. It's not the end of the world. We're not saying this is a bad loss. We're panicking. Nothing like that. Not even close. But for a team that is very, very good, that we think highly of, that you think highly of, whether you think they're a contender or not, they're pretty freaking inconsistent. One of the most inconsistent teams in football right now. And we saw a little bit last year, too, so it's kind of going into that. And I don't really mean from game to game, and that's a problem, but I mean from play to play within the game. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is a very, very good quarterback. He has some arm talent that most quarterbacks do not have. He can play. Obviously, they have explosive players everywhere, and it shows. It shows most of the time. I think most of the time it will going forward, but it showed even throughout the Chiefs game, just the early in drives, getting these receivers going, Trevor Lawrence making some ridiculous throws, and then for them not to be able to get in the end zone, it's like all of a sudden they shut down, and even Trevor Lawrence is still making good throws, and they can't really make plays, but they kind of just disappear as a team all of a sudden, and it's from snap to snap, from drive to drive, from game to game. It's all over the place where they're inconsistent. And, there was maybe some worries about the defense going into the year and then after week 1, but they played pretty well in this game. But is there going to be, I think there's going to be a lot of weeks where the offense is playing elite and then the defense is gone. The defense is playing great. Like they did it against the freaking Chiefs, and the offense can't really finish drives and can't do it. So I think just too good of a team, too much talent to kind of shut down and be inconsistent as they are. So they do have to fix that, which I think they'll get better. I'm confident they'll get better as the year goes on, but they do have to fix that to be the contender that they can be. That's kind of the thing I'm looking out for there. So that's kind of a takeaway from the Jags. Number 9 and number 10 are kind of two-teamers. Both these are two-teamers. The Cowboys and the Niners right now look like the two best football teams in football. And I don't think it's even close. And that doesn't mean, there's always people that overreact from a statement like that. That doesn't mean anyone else isn't playing good. That doesn't mean, I still think the Chiefs are really good. I still think the Bills are really good. The Ravens, the Dolphins, and some of the teams I just mentioned, the two of the teams I just mentioned we'll talk about next. They're playing great football right now. So I'm not saying no other teams can contend. No other teams. Obviously, there's two NFC teams here. I'm not saying no other teams are looking great. Not saying that. But I think it's pretty clear cut that right now, it's only been 2 weeks, but we kind of thought this going in this year, the teams would be up there. So it's not like these teams that were supposed to be bad and all of a sudden we're saying they're great because the 2 weeks. I wouldn't be doing that. It's teams that it's not a surprise because they are very good football teams, but they are proving that they are the two best teams of football right now. And as stacked as the AFC is, we got two NFC teams here. And then maybe we want to see both these teams have more of a test because the Cowboys played the Giants, who we thought would be better. The Cowboys made us realize they're not that great. And they played the Jets, and the 49ers played. And the Rams were tough in week 1, so they just played the Rams this week, and the Steelers we thought would be tough. So I don't think they played the worst teams possible. And then factoring in the Cowboys, the Cowboys played the Jets. They played Zach Wilson, the Jets, but that is one of the best defenses in football, I think, right there with these two teams. And the Cowboys offense looked really good. Dak took care of the football. He was very efficient with the ball. They can pass. They can run on it. They're showing anybody. We know what their defense is going to do. I would say the Cowboys probably the best defense in football. The Niners are probably second. But you can flip those if you want. So the Cowboys, that actually is an impressive game, even though it's Zach Wilson, the Jets. Look bigger picture, look at it a little harder here. So good thing, and they look like a legit, serious threat. And the same with the Niners. They're using all their playmakers. Purdy looks good. There was some worry coming off the injury. Shouldn't really worry too much anymore about that. I guess just stay healthy. And the defense is making plays as well, looking like a top defense in football. Looks like a good Rams team, not letting them sneak up on you there. So I just think I don't think they're super, super, super far ahead of, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Eagles, the Ravens, the Dolphins, all their teams that are looking good. But I think it's like, I don't know, I don't think you can really argue. I think it's pretty clear cut. These are the two best teams in football right now based on the talent they have, and how they are playing right now, only through 2 weeks. So that's a big takeaway for me. And it was kind of one I had last week too. They just look like the best teams, and the good teams show up. They don't have any rust. They don't have, none of that. So it's a good look for those two teams. And then number 10 also features two teams. The Ravens and the Dolphins are kind of somewhat in the same boat. I think legit contenders, maybe more of contenders than we thought, even though we knew these were good football teams, more of a contenders than we thought if they get and stay healthy. I want to say get and stay healthy, both these teams. The Dolphins really aren't that beat up. We'd like to see Phillips out there, though. And it's just really a shame that Jalen Ramsey had to get hurt because they are missing that corner and have arguably the best corner in football out there on the field, as you're making Xavier Howard a number 2 corner, which helps him a lot because he's a very good corner and a playmaking corner. I mean, it would be incredible. It would boost your defense by that much. So that's tough. So you could say for the Dolphins, get and stay healthy, but you are wondering because this is the same thing as last year. Tua looked like an MVP. Mike McDaniel looked like the best coach of all time, early last year, and the injuries played a part. But then they came back, but then they were kind of figured out a little bit, so it's still something in the back of our minds that we're still wondering and kind of we'll have to wait and see. And the Ravens are already beat up, which is just classic Ravens, and it's tough, but they are still playing incredible football. And we talked about them in the biggest winners column in the most recent video. Some more takeaways if you want to watch that. But, even though their down players are still really good, I still think they have upside too. Under Todd Monken, I think we didn't get to see his offense kind of getting going until the second half of week 1. But then not even then because Mark Andrews wasn't there yet. And, so I think they're going to just keep getting going, and they're trusting they can win with limiting it a little bit. So I think more and more is going to come out. They're going to get used to this system, and it'll be it's already a tough offense to stop, but I think it'll be tough. But man, they got to get healthy. They're missing so many damn pieces that's ridiculous. So it's hard to trust them in a stacked AFC when they're already beat up and we're kind of used to them. You hate to say it, but getting more and more beat up rather than getting healthier, which in a way they could get healthier at one point because guys like Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Williams will be back. Ronnie Stanley, hope they'll be back, obviously. But it is tough. They do have to stay healthy. But these two teams, everybody on the planet knew they were good. Whether you had them winning their division or you had them as a wild card, even if you had them just missing the playoffs, we knew they were good teams, but maybe they're more of contenders, but there's an if in there. But the Dolphins, I did like both these teams. I liked that they won with a mixture of pass, run, and defense in week 2. I like that they can do that. The Dolphins at times look like the best offense in football, the most explosive offense. Tua looks like an MVP caliber player. He slips up here and there, but it's okay. Again, just got to stay healthy. So those are my 10 takeaways. The last 2, we actually had 2 teams in each. So maybe it's more than 10 takeaways. And we kind of had multiple takeaways for each team. So can't hurt to have more. The more, the better there. So let me know your guys' thoughts. If you think I missed one, if you have some, this is a video. Let me know your thoughts on the video idea. I kind of split up the winners and losers and takeaways. So we kind of focus on those important things a little more. So let me know your thoughts on this idea. We got loads of content, and like you see, we're always adding more too, especially when we get to like trade deadline, around there, more playoff predictions, more draft content. So we got you. Like, subscribe to notifications on. Very important to follow us on Twitter. There's links pinned in the comments for that. Giveaway, sponsors, other videos, things like that. So check it out. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.